How's it going?
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Chasten?
I'm good. I'm good. I love your background.
Oh my gosh, it's sort of a disaster. I put up plants because I'm in the middle of moving, and so instead of seeing like the bare mattress and like boxes of shoes, you get to see some greenery. So thank you. I like your background better.
I had to make this today for this cause because things are tight in DC and it's a lot of kids' toys everywhere. So
Right.
I had to find a calm corner. I'm glad that we could connect. This is really exciting.
I know. This is so exciting. So I'll quickly introduce us to the audience and let people know why we're here. We are here celebrating Simon Teen's Fall Pride festivities because instead of just celebrating Pride, 1 month during the summer, why not make it all year round? So I'm super excited to be here with Chasten. If you guys have been living under a rock, Chasten's book, I Have Something to Tell You for Young Adults, came out earlier this year. And then my book also came out earlier this year, If I See You Again Tomorrow. There we go. They look good together. I like it.
I like the color.
They work. So we'll be doing the live event for about half hour in total. And if folks want to go ahead and ask their questions, feel free to do so using the question box. I don't know what the appropriate term is, but and then about the last 10 minutes or so, I'll go ahead and ask the audience questions. So get your questions in now or in the next 20 minutes or so. But I would love to kick things off. I've been super excited to chat with you, Chasten, as a fellow Michigan gay. I'm from a small town called Clio outside Flint, and you're from Traverse City.
Yes.
Hey. Sweet. I'm wondering, to kick things off, so like growing up in Clio was such a great small town in so many ways, but it was also, small, pretty conservative. I didn't feel like there was too many people that I could relate to. I didn't really know that many gay people or any gay people in my town.
Yeah.
Were things similar to you in Traverse City? And I know you get into a lot in the book as well. But what was your experience like growing up in Traverse City as a closeted gay kid?
Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about gay people at all. Like, I didn't know that other people were gay growing up in Traverse City. We just simply did not talk about the existence of LGBTQ people. The only time I ever really heard about queer people growing up was when it was used in a derogatory way. So either the slurs that other kids would, use to demean you or attack you with. And it wasn't really until we got to shows like Will and Grace on television, which I just did a high school talk the other day, and it really hurt when nobody knew what I was talking about. I was like, oh no, we're getting older, aren't we? But we finally had some characters on television. And that was sort of like therapy and torture because I wasn't sure if I was allowed to laugh at it because I didn't want my family to figure out my big secret. But I really didn't have any role models. I didn't know anybody else who was out. So I just, stayed in the closet for 18 years.
Yeah, I had very similar experience growing up as well. You feel so isolated in so many ways, and I know so many teenagers are going through similar struggles across the country in cities, suburbs, rural areas.
Yeah.
Is there a difference now returning to Traverse City with your husband Pete and your family? Is that, I'm sure it's a different experience now. What's that like?
Oh, it's fantastic. Up North Pride is coming up. Traverse City has a Pride now, last weekend in September. And I walked that march with my family in 2019. It was beautiful to see the community coming out and supporting the LGBTQ community, businesses, just saying that, people are welcome here and hate is not welcome here. I remember there was this sticker they put on all the city vehicles growing up, and it had rainbow puzzle pieces, sort of holding hands, interlocking, and it said we are Traverse City. And it wasn't specifically about the LGBTQ community, but I remember that the backlash to that sticker being on city buses or police cars was so homophobic that they took them down, or people would just rip them off of the the vehicles themselves, which from a young age told me exactly how people felt in my community about LGBTQ people. And then fast forward, to 2019, seeing this march, and it wasn't even it wasn't this like big commercial pride. It was literally just hundreds of people marching down, Front Street, Traverse City, Michigan, saying, we're here. We've always been here. We're not going anywhere. So things are definitely changing. Of course, that doesn't mean everything has gotten better, but things are definitely changing, and it's very inspiring.
Yeah, for sure. My parents now live on the west side of the state, and they had, in their small town, they had the first Pride celebration that they've ever had this past summer. And the organizers were expecting, I think, they were like, if there's 500 people, that will be an amazing success. And there was thousands of people that came out. And I was just so overwhelmed. But it does show you that things, as cliche as it sounds, things get better. And it's cool to see that progress. I'm wondering too, so I know you wrote your memoir originally back in 2020, I believe, and then you wrote this version for a YA audience, for teenagers, young people. What was the inspiration behind doing that? Because I love that you did that, but I'm curious to know what motivated you to do it.
Yeah, I just wanted to write the book I wish I would have had when I was in 8th grade. A book that would have just shown me that someone's been through it, that I wasn't alone, nothing was wrong with me, that there could be inspiring things in the future for me, that I wasn't, defined by the people that I was surrounded by, or, that I wasn't defined simply by my surroundings. Traverse City wasn't forever. At that time, it felt like, I wanted to get as far away from Traverse City as possible. Now, of course, I live there again. But I wish I would have known at the time nothing was wrong with me, and that this feeling was only temporary, that one day I would bust down the closet door, and one day I would find love, and one day I would feel successful in a career. But all of those things seemed so far away and unimaginable at the time. And I wanted this book to just to be that calming voice that says, I know what you're going through, and I've been there, and it does get better. Because I think even now, even though some things are better, there are still millions of kids in this country who are questioning whether or not they truly belong, whether they really fit in, and whether this country is going to continue progressing forward, or whether we go backwards. And I hope this is just one small sliver of hope. Yeah, for sure. I feel like every time, and not just with LGBTQ rights, but really across the board, whenever you have those who step forward, there's always that backlash to it. And I feel like we're kind of in that era now where there's, the book bans, and there's a lot of homophobia and especially transphobia targeting different groups in our community, which is concerning. But that makes it all the more important to have books like yours out there. Were there any? So my first book was The Sky Blues, and it was actually based in a fictional town outside of Traverse City called Autobiographical-ish, I'll say, because the character was very different than me. But I definitely let my own upbringing in Michigan kind of inform the story and the setting, and there were certain scenes and chapters that were really difficult for me to write, even having that closeness to it. But I'm sure it was even more exhausting or emotional to have to write a memoir where you're actually thinking about these own experiences that you truly lived. Were there particular scenes or chapters or moments in the book that were really tough to write, or maybe on the other end of the spectrum that were really amazing and nostalgic and cool to revisit? Yeah, of course, it's hard to go back down memory lane with really hard memories. I ran away from home when I came out. I packed a bag and I slept on a friend's couch. I was putting myself through college at that time, and part of me really wants to move on from that story, but I've sort of been on this book tour since May, and I'm retelling it, and I have to sort of compartmentalize that telling that story, even though I've told it 1,000 times and I lived it myself, might mean something else to somebody hearing it for the first time. But it was really hard to write it in the first book and then go back and sort of rework it and expand it the second time, which is why I tried to find this balance between like the trauma and the hardship and the humor in this book, because I also think we're deserving of queer joy. Like we don't, all of our stories don't just have to be about the trauma and the running away from home and being rejected and losing friends. And even though some of that happened, I also wanted to share what it was like to learn to love myself, and to find all of the things that made me feel alive. So I really enjoyed writing those parts. Probably spent more time on those parts just because it was more fun to write rather than focusing on the hardship. But when I was writing it, I had to think about how to deliver the story in a way that it would be impactful enough for the reader, while trying to protect myself at the same time. And I'm sure that you felt this. Sometimes you just have to put it away, and you just have to revisit it another day because you don't want to feel those things at the moment.
Right. Yeah, no, it is tough thinking about those old memories and kind of reminding yourself that, to your point, it's like every time you're talking about it, the hope is that there's at least one person listening that it makes a difference for, and that's really what it's all about. I would love to hear your thoughts on, because as a 30-something, I think we're like roughly about the same age, as a 30-something, writing books for teens and high school as young people, I'm constantly thinking back on my own high school days and letting that kind of inform the stories that I'm writing. But I'm also reminding myself that I was in high school 15 to 20 years ago, and so things have changed quite a bit in the past decade plus, especially for queer teens. Some things have stayed the same, some things are really different. What do you think has really changed in terms of being a queer teen today versus when we were in high school, 15, 20 years ago, better or worse?
Yeah, one of the things I've really enjoyed about the book tour is getting the opportunity to meet with students or do roundtables with student organizations or LGBTQ organizations in the community, listen to students, hear what they're going through. And all across the country, whether it's, rural America or in a city, I think every young person is feeling what we were feeling in high school as well. High school's a hard time. You're measuring yourself up against everybody that you're surrounded by. But then you also have the additional layer of social media now. We didn't really have social media when I was in high school. We had just gotten Facebook right when I was graduating. And so that's hard. That's hard to not only be measuring yourself against all the people that you're surrounded by in your high school, but also everyone on the internet. And then when you are surviving on the internet, basically, you're also seeing some of the worst things that people can say or do. And that's really hard, especially when you're a teenager. Other things really inspiring, like student organization that I met in Iowa. There's this student organization called Iowa WTF. And it's these students who are basically creating a statewide GSA, and they're expanding this web of inclusion and accessibility for students all around Iowa who might not have a GSA, who might not even have another queer peer in their school. And they're basically trying to keep one another alive. And then they're also going to the state capitol on the weekend and protesting, transphobic and homophobic bills. So that is so inspiring to me, because the thought of being a high schooler and going to the state capitol and saying I'm gay is terrifying. Would have been extremely terrifying to young Chasten. But not only doing that, like taking time away from enjoying your youth, literally enjoying being a kid, to having to protest these homophobic bills in your state. It's so inspiring to me, some of the work that young people are doing. And so I think things, of course, have changed for the better in many ways, because some people have the ability to come out earlier, or the ability to just feel like they can exist themselves. But at the same time, we have really backwards politicians who are trying to push these transphobic and homophobic bills, not to mention book bans around the country. And so young people have to focus on that as well. And so sometimes it does feel like we took a few steps forward and now we're taking a few steps back.
Yeah, no, that kind of leads into my next question, but I really quickly want to know, I think some people might be getting some feedback from me. If that's you, I'm sorry. Chasten, if you can maybe turn the volume down on your phone a little bit.
Turn my volume down.
Oh, you did?
Folks, let me know if that works. I'm keeping it to just where I can make out what you're saying.
I know it's hard to troubleshoot as you're live and you're like, I don't know. But Emily, hi Emily, if you're watching, let me know if that's better or if there's any other ways to maybe troubleshoot. I'll try my best. But yeah, for my next question, which you kind of led into a little bit, on your book tour, which you said you've been to so many dozens of places for this book tour, a lot of it, many places weren't in, little blue bubbles, but in purple areas and red states, many of the areas that you were just talking about, book bans and transphobic laws, many areas that are kind of on the front lines of passing those sorts of policies and have leaders that are pushing that agenda. And I think, especially with you being such a public figure, and of course your husband Pete being in the Biden administration and both being outspoken LGBTQ advocates, what is that experience like going into those areas and into those communities? Do you feel a difference? Is there any hostility? Is it surprisingly warm? Like, what is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, public life always comes with some hostility and weirdness, so you have to make room for that. But the thing that's been really inspiring to me are the conversations that we're having at these book events. And book events have also had a lot of older people. It's a YA book tour, but it's been a lot of parents, community members who just want to know how to be better allies. And they see what's going on in their state house or around the country, and they're exhausted. That's one thing I'm feeling around the country, is that people are so exhausted. And that's sort of what this one political party wants, right? They want to beat people down, and they want to get you to the point where you no longer have any fight left. But that's when they win. And so I have folks showing up at these book events who are looking for the tools and the language necessary to continue having these conversations with their families, their loved ones, and maybe just within themselves. I've had a lot of people sort of show up who might not have supported the LGBTQ community, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, who are now trying to figure out how to be better allies. And so I have seen, some of the most egregious book ban stuff up close. I've been in Tennessee, Texas, Florida, Utah, and I know that people are exhausted and fearful, but people are also fired up. And that's the other thing I really appreciate about young people, is that sometimes I feel like they're ready to burn it all down. Like, they are not getting kicked around by these politicians, and they're not giving up. They are more energized than ever to either be able to vote these people out or do what's necessary to organize so that other people can vote these people out. Because they want to focus on being a kid, and they don't want to focus on fighting for their own dignity, especially when it comes to their trans peers. Figuring out what they can do to be better allies and put their allyship into action, especially for the trans community at a moment like this.
Yeah, my next question is going to be about what gives you hope, but I feel like that answered it. So I will ask this question though. I know for me, thinking about Pride, I think like in my early 20s, it was much more of a party, and I was just ready to like be with my friends and have a good time. And as I've gotten older, I think my relationship to Pride has changed a bit, where I think I've been more intentional with like learning about queer history and like who our kind of pioneers and trailblazers were in our different communities, and why Pride has been historically exclusive to some people and left certain people behind. And as gay white cis men, we haven't necessarily felt that as much as other people in our community. And so just kind of being cognizant of those sorts of things, Pride has kind of shifted over the years for me in terms of how I see it and how I celebrate it. Is that the same for you? Has that kind of shifted in terms of how you see Pride or how you celebrate or acknowledge it throughout the years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like when I came out of the closet, I was 18. I just started college, and for me, Pride and sort of still like Pride is a celebration of our existence, right? Like, the closet didn't get me. I survived. Mm-hmm. And when I was younger, I felt like I had two options. Either I was going to come out or I was going to have to end it. And I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to know what that freedom felt like. Mm-hmm. But when I came out, I ran. And so the first time I went to a Pride, it was like celebrating the fact that I survived, that I made it out of the closet. And Pride is always an opportunity for me to pause and just reflect on what that really scared 18-year-old kid was going through. Mm-hmm. But now I'm a dad. So many things have changed. I never thought I'd have the right to marry. I never thought I would get to be a dad. And so I celebrate these accomplishments, but also you're totally right in pointing out that you and I also sit in a position of privilege that other people in our community do not have. And so for me as an ally, it's very important to do a little less talking and a little more listening, which is why I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down with trans rights activists or organizations and figure out how I can at least use my voice or my privilege, or even when I'm on television, even talking about this book or the book tour or whatever the news topic du jour is that I've been, picked up on to talk about on television. How can I specifically use that platform to spread awareness, to deliver information that is accurate, to fight some of this disinformation that's going around, especially about trans people. And that's really important to me. I was constantly thinking about the fact that I made it out, and now it's my turn to sort of make sure other people are getting pulled up the ladder as well.
Right. I love that. Cool. So with about 8 or 9 minutes left of the live, I'll go ahead and check out some of the questions that people are asking. The first one I'm seeing is asking what would you consider the best age group for your book? So for me, the young adult books, so really 12 or 13 and up usually is sort of the main age group. Would you agree with that, Chasten, for you?
Yeah, we said sort of it's about 12 years old, 8th grade. I really was writing with my 8th grade self in mind. Yeah. I think high schoolers will get a lot out of this book as well. It would be a really quick read for a high schooler. But this is also kind of a book I wish more parents would read, because I think it would be a really easy, accessible way for them to sort of understand what a young gay kid might be going through.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keep asking questions, y'all. I think, okay, here we go. It was taking a minute to load the questions, and now I see one. What's one thing you want readers to take away from the book? I'll let you answer first.
Yeah, I actually wrote some discussion questions or reflection questions in the back of the book. I taught 8th grade, and I thought that would be a nice thing to include so that some of the thinking or reflecting doesn't stop at the last page. And so I hope that readers check that out, because there's a lot in there that I hope maybe some straight peers or maybe parents or teachers think about. Like, is it an LGBTQ person's responsibility to come out? Mm-hmm. Like, are you owed that information? But I guess the one key takeaway is you're not alone. You are not alone, and you are not defined by your surroundings, and that it will be okay. Yeah, I love that. I think sort of similarly in my book, If I See You Again Tomorrow, it's a time loop, kind of Groundhog's Day, repeating day romance, and the idea of tomorrow, and if Clark, the main character, will get to tomorrow is sort of the big question. And I think there's a little bit of symbolic meaning there in terms of, getting to tomorrow as a queer person. I think sometimes, especially when you're young, it can feel like it really won't get better, and you're kind of stuck in your small town or wherever you're growing up, and it can get dark. And so I think giving hope and giving hope to young people, especially young queer people, that it will get better and that tomorrow will come and it'll be a better day, is something that meant a lot to me when I was writing this book. So I think it's also important for us to both say, I don't want to speak for you, but I hated when people said that when I was younger. I hated that phrase. Right. It gets better. And I was like, when? Like, today sucked. Tomorrow's probably going to suck too, Mm-hmm. But it's also just important to remember that, this is not forever. That there will come a day when you go to the grocery store and someone says hi to you and they're like, oh, we went to school together, and you have no idea who they are. But when I was in school, I thought that their opinion was the only one that mattered. I was constantly worried about what they thought about me. And so sometimes it is about clinging to hope and surviving, right? And it's just finding the people to surround yourself with, the right books to surround yourself with. But it is also okay to roll your eyes at that phrase.
That is such a good point, because I had the same exact experience when I was younger, because it sounds almost like an empty just thing people will say. And now that I'm saying it, I'm like, no, I mean it, but it sometimes rings a little out. Yeah. It's so funny. Just a reminder to keep asking questions with a couple minutes left, about 5 minutes left. Another question that we didn't get to the other half of was, what moment or scene from the book was the most fun to write? I know we kind of mentioned that there was difficult parts, but was there one particular scene that really stood out?
Yeah. I remember writing this chapter. I was sitting in a coffee shop in Traverse City, and I wanted to write this funny chapter, basically about the time I figured out that I was really dramatic, in like third or fourth grade, and I just like realized I had a gift for like acting, and I wanted to break up the stories and some of the hard stories with humor, and I just remember sitting there like all day in this cafe, just like laughing at myself. I see my editor in the comments. Yes, it is about a butterfly funeral, and I was making myself laugh. I had so much fun thinking about what that kid was what that kid was thinking.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. Eric is asking, have you watched Heartstopper, and do you think shows like this help spread awareness? I've just watched the first season, and it's great. It's very cute. I love it. What about you?
I don't really get a lot of time for television at all anymore with the kids. We're more watching like Bluey right now. But I'm also nervous to start Heartstopper because I'm always afraid to start anything that looks like I'm really going to enjoy it, because then I'll want to keep watching it and I'll probably stay up and lose a lot of sleep. Of course, these things are great. I think anything that makes people feel less alone is totally important. Same thing I felt with Love, Simon. In Becky Albertalli's book, it was that hit close to home for me. It kind of felt like similar parts of my story. Of course, anything that offers people either a window or a mirror, right? The opportunity to see a little bit of yourself reflected, or an opportunity to peer into somebody else's life. I think we need a lot more queer joy right now.
For sure. Second that. Someone else asked if you're ever interested in looking into writing fiction.
Oh, yeah, I've been asked a couple times. I don't know. I'd have to pick your brain on that. Maybe that's another conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely a different beast, that's for sure. Let me see here. Kind of related to the question before this, what else are you guys reading or watching that gives you hope? What am I reading or watching that gives me hope? Heartstopper is a good one. I don't know if this question's for me, because I'm on like a true crime documentary thing right now, which is definitely not hopeful and definitely not something to watch if you're like, wanting to feel good about the world. So I don't know if I can answer this question, but if I think of something, I'll chime in. I don't know. Is there anything else that you would add?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still kind of on the book tour right now, and full-time dad, so I'm reading a lot of kids' books. I started working on a kids' book, which I'm really excited about, just because we don't have enough books with two dads in them, and so it really frustrated me to the point where I started to write it. So we'll see.
Yeah. Have there been any kind of stand-up moments for you on the book tour from readers, or maybe to your point earlier, from teachers or educators or parents that really stand out to you as like, oh, I will never forget this moment because it was so heartfelt, or you learned something new or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, my kindergarten teacher came to my Traverse City event.
Oh, that was cool.
That was really cute. There was also this really profound moment in Texas where this mom had driven a couple hours to Austin, and you could just tell she was exhausted. She had a trans kid, and she didn't know what to do anymore. Luckily, we had folks from Equality Texas there, and there were parents of other trans kids there. And what she really just needed was community. And we were able to connect her with Equality Texas and some of these other families, and watching them talk after the event made me feel really good about just, maybe it wasn't about the book. It was just about people coming together and sharing that community and that love, and knowing that mom had a couple more people in her corner. That was really special.
That's huge. Yeah, I just think, to your point, that sense of community and belonging and talking to others who know what you're going through or can relate in some way is just so important. We are at time, so I don't want to, I know you have, the family to get back to, I don't want to steal any more of your time, but this was so great. If y'all haven't seen or checked out Chasten's book, please do. I have something to tell you, as well as my Time Loop romance, if I see you again tomorrow. Chasten, where can folks find you other than obviously Instagram? Are you on other platforms, or is there anything else you wanted to kind of throw out there?
Yeah, I think we're all fighting for our life on Twitter. I'm on Threads. You can follow me, follow the book tour at chastenwrites.com. I'm not allowed to be on TikTok, so you won't find me there. But I'm a millennial, so I wait for them to filter on down to Instagram.
Love that. Same here. Same here. I get it. Sweet. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you all for tuning in. This was so fun.
Thanks, Robbie.
Awesome. Have a good one. Bye.